I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. In today's episode, we're going to be reacting to an article from ClutchPoints.com. They caught up with Cade Cunningham, and he had some pretty positive things to say about John Collins. So we'll be reading and reacting what Cade said about John Collins. There was more schedule releasing today. I don't know why the NBA is making this a 3-day thing, but we have the full NBA Cup schedule with the Detroit Pistons. I will say their grouping is probably the weakest out of any NBA Cup grouping. And then Martin Luther King Day, the Pistons will be playing on that. I have the full Martin Luther King Day schedule. We'll be putting it on the screen as always if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're an audio listener, we'll just kind of be reading it along so you guys can follow along as well. But let's get into the first section of this podcast. Again, Clutch Points caught up with Cade Cunningham talking about John Collins. So if you guys want to go over to clutchpoints.com and go read this article, I definitely encourage you to do it. It was a really good article by them. But one of the first quotes that I did pull from their article was Cade Cunningham on John Collins. And it says, quote, "He's somebody that I've respected for a long time since I played against him. He's somebody that stands out whenever you play against him as far as how hard he works and the skill set he has. To have him on the team now after having took note of him as a player that I could see myself playing with a long time ago, we're excited. He felt the same way talking about me. So both of us are excited to get on the court together," end quote. So this is the first section of the article from clutchpoints.com talking with Cade Cunningham on John Collins. And I want to say, I think a lot of Pistons fans, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I feel like it's a large majority of Pistons fans that tune into these podcasts on YouTube, or even audio listeners for that matter, are, if you follow us on social media, that have suggested, like, hey, Anthony, like, I really like John Collins. And this is like dating back to Atlanta days. This is dating back when he was playing with like Trae Young and Torian Prince, right? So, I mean, he's a player that I think does make a whole lot of sense for the Detroit Pistons, especially at the power forward position. He's able to stretch the floor, hit his three-pointers. He's able to catch lobs, pretty good in transition. I think the questions that I do have are defensively, because I know he's not a lockdown defender by any means. He's a passable defender. I'm not saying he's a traffic cone out there, but I think he's a passable defender. I'll be interested to see how the Pistons do use him defensively. I think offensively, I have a pretty good understanding of what he's going to bring to the Detroit Pistons, and I think he'll get a little bit closer to his Utah days, maybe a little bit of his Atlanta days as well, in terms of scoring and just production, because I think his usage is going to be a little bit higher than it was with the Los Angeles Clippers. And like the Clippers season, like I wouldn't really like look at his stats and look that he only put up around 13 points a game. When you had Kawhi Leonard having one of his best seasons in a long time and James Harden having the basketball in his hands, John Collins most nights was maybe third, fourth option at best. Like that was a very veteran heavy team. And he was basically just kind of like a stand in the corner guy, you know, just like dunker spot type of situations with the Clippers. I think here in Detroit, we'll use him a lot more than Ty Lue used him with the Los Angeles Clippers. But that was the first part of the article. I do agree with Cade. Like he's someone that fits very well with Cade. But to be fair, a lot of players fit with Cade Cunningham because that's just the type of basketball player he is. There was another section of this article, of Cade kind of talking about John Collins as a basketball player. And I do want to read the quote. I actually did not make a graphic for this, but I still do have it pulled up on my computer. And this is Cade talking about John Collins. This is, quote, "The best thing, there isn't a single thing he's going to bring more than one thing. He's going to bring a lot of different things that we need: offense, defense, athleticism, toughness, mindset." Also touched on his three-point shooting as well. And kind of like what we were just talking about, like offensively, you're getting, I think more versatility with him versus Tobias Harris. Not to say Tobias Harris was a bad fit on this team. I thought he was a great fit with this team. He was a player that you could dump the ball off in the mid post and he could go to work there. I think John Collins is a little bit different. I don't think he's the type of player where you can reliably dump him the ball in the mid post and he's going to come away with those, fade away Tobias Harris jump shots. I think what you'll see him do a little bit more is pick and roll actions with Cade Cunningham or whoever the primary ball handler is. I think you could see him in backdoor cuts, dunker spot situations. You could see him as a small ball five, stretching the floor out. That's the one area where I'm really interested to see if JB does look to do that. I know he's not really the type of coach that likes to have his bigs stretch the floor. Didn't really see that too much with Isaiah Stewart whatsoever. Same with Jalen Duren. He likes to have his bigs in the painted area, but I think John Collins is big enough to play a small ball five if you want to kind of have a creative lineup that has more floor spacing around your ball handlers and your wings. And I agree with Cade. I don't really think Collins is a one-dimensional player by any means. He's just not. But that's just kind of my take on the whole John Collins thing. It was a short little piece over at Clutch Points. If you guys do want to check it out, we're going to get into more NBA scheduling next. We're just going to take a quick break, you guys, and we will be right back. Okay, you guys, we're back. Let's get into the second segment of this very short podcast, and it is the Detroit Pistons scheduling. Now, the NBA Cup scheduling came out today, and the Pistons have 4 games for the NBA Cup, much like every other NBA team out there. So the first game is going to be very early on in the regular season, end of October 30th to be exact. That'll be in Brooklyn, and that'll be at 7:30 p.m. So that is their first NBA Cup game. Their second game is a month later versus the Toronto Raptors at 7:30, and that will be an Amazon Prime game. So you got the Raptors as your second NBA Cup game. 4 days later, we're going to be heading down to Orlando to play them in an NBA Cup game. That'll be at 7 p.m. And then 3 days later, you'll be playing the Milwaukee Bucks at home to finish off your NBA Cup game at 7:30. As of right now, and this could change, the Raptors game is the only nationally televised game. Now, obviously, we know that the Pistons are going to be on TV 20 Detroit on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, I believe Fox 17 and whatever local stations they have over there. But as of right now, Amazon Prime is going to be the only national game that picked up for the Detroit Pistons NBA Cup schedule. Now, obviously, if you lose the NBA Cup, you do get a week off, basically. But I think the Pistons have a pretty good shot of winning their grouping. It's probably one of the more weaker cup groupings with the whole NBA that the Pistons do have. I think they have a pretty good shot of, making it to the second round of the NBA Cup and possibly playing in Vegas for the championship over there. But again, they're going to be playing the Nets, the Raptors, the Magic, and the Bucks. I would probably say the Raptors and the Magic are the two teams that are probably going to give them the most difficulties. But these were two teams that the Pistons beat during the regular season, and they beat the Magic in the playoffs, obviously. They're going to have a brand new head coach in John Sweeney, so it'll be interesting to see how the Magic do look pretty early on in the regular season, late November. But that's the first portion of the schedule with the NBA Cup. Now, the second portion is Martin Luther King Day. Now, these games are throughout the day, and the Pistons have the first game, and they'll be playing at Cleveland at 12 p.m. The 76ers have the second game throughout the day at Atlanta at 2:30 p.m. The Minnesota Timberwolves will be in New York playing the Knicks at 5 p.m. And the last game is the Rockets at the Memphis Grizzlies at 7:30 p.m. And all these games will be streamed on NBC and Peacock. So those are games, Martin Luther King, that the NBA always does play on that day, which I think is really cool to honor Dr. King. But the Pistons will be playing the first game at 12 p.m. Isn't it kind of funny, though? The Pistons open up the season with the first game at 3 p.m. And then they open up Martin Luther King with the first game at 12 p.m. People are still just like kind of crashing out over the 3 p.m. start to like open up the regular season. And I saw a lot of Pistons fans saying like, I'm going to be at work at 3 p.m. What the hell were they thinking? If it wasn't the Pistons, it was going to be somebody else. Like it really was. Like you look at the scheduling with that day at Little Caesars Arena, like they got a concert at 8:30 the same day. So those roadies are going to be really busy. Like, watch the Celtics Pistons game go into overtime. Like that would be hilarious, honestly, because there's like a concert at 8:30 that day. That would be really funny. I would laugh. I know the roadies would laugh because they would really have to bust their ass to tear apart the basketball court and get ready for a concert in the same day. But did want to kind of talk about the two scheduling games, and the full schedule will be released tomorrow on Thursday. Again, I don't know why the NBA makes this a 3-day thing. Just release the whole schedule at once and just overstimulate me. It's just kind of crazy to drop it 3 days in a row. Like little teases of like Christmas Day. Today was NBA Cup and Martin Luther King Day games that did get released. It's just kind of wild to me. I don't really understand it. I know it's the off season and it's like I almost said October. It's August. But I would rather them just kind of release it all at once. I don't know how you guys feel with how the NBA has kind of released the schedule so far, but I do want to end the podcast, but before we do end the podcast, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now we have 2026-2027 seed odds out. So for the Pistons to finish with the over at 4.5, they're minus 130. And what this means is if the Pistons finish with the 5th seed or worse, so they have the over at minus 130. For the Pistons to finish under 4.5, the 4.5 seed, they're at plus 100. And this would mean if the Pistons finished 4th seed or better at minus 4.5. To me, I would probably take the under. I think this is going to be a team that's at least a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Still feel that way. I'll die on that hill. And if I'm right, cool. If I'm not, I'll admit I'm wrong. But hope you guys did enjoy the short episode. Cade Cunningham talking about John Collins and part 2 of the NBA scheduling with the Pistons grouping in the NBA Cup and the Martin Luther King games. But I'll talk to you guys down below in the comment section. We will have another podcast tomorrow. It'll be a longer one. We're going to be joined by Ku Cahill, Locked On Pistons. I'm sure you guys know Ku. If you don't, you live under a rock. One of the best Pistons podcasters out there in the space. So we'll be joined by him. We'll probably be reacting to the full NBA schedule that does drop tomorrow. And we'll also kind of get into a couple other things. A lot of these NBA players are posting their summer run. So we'll be talking about that as far as jump shot, how that looks. Jalen Duren and his 3-point shot, because that actually looks pretty good. But we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.